Hello guys and welcome to another video. Today it's going to be a little bit of something different. Many of you may be aware that I'm German, and so my German ERL is the PrimeLeague. And today we will be doing a draft analysis, and later in another video, because it would be too long otherwise, we will also do a game analysis on one of the PrimeLeague first div games. And it's going to be Eintracht Frankfurt against it's 404 Multigaming. Both pretty well-known names in the German esports scene. Frankfurt is actually the esports offshoot of one of the bigger or biggest football teams. So yeah, they have some pretty good backing, and they have done quite well for themselves so far. Without further ado, let's jump into the draft. If you guys don't understand German, that is not that important, because there is not going to be that much that interests us with the casters. Let's just jump a little bit forward so we can see all those bands. Okay, let's jump through all the bands really quick. First of all, Eintracht Frankfurt is blue side, and 404 is red side. 404, I guess. And the blue side gains the ability to be able to really target the chip pool of somebody in the opposing team, while red side basically has to ban either the really good first picks or flex picks that the blue side might be able to use. And that's basically the trend of what we are seeing here. The Hecarim and the Kindred are both target bans against Casapina, the jungler of 404. And the Jhin ban, I guess, is also targeted against Vardex, or just nasty to play against. If you're looking to pick an AD carry that is countered, or that has a hard time against Jhin, because counters are not really all that relevant on ADC as it is in top lane or mid lane. Because you always have a support that can win or lose the lane for you. Then on 404's side, we have Pantheon, Olaf, and Seraphine. With Pantheon and Seraphine, they are both very prominent flexes. Pantheon in top, mid, jungle, and support. And while it's not as good as support anymore, it's still a possibility of a flex that makes it so good. The champion in itself is not that broken, but just that you can pick it on one and just put it wherever you feel is really good, because 404 doesn't want to draft 4 Pantheon counters in 4 different positions. That would be terrible. Then Seraphine is also flexible in mid lane. In theory, we haven't really seen it yet. In AD carry and in support, we've seen it both very regularly, and it also seems to perform quite well. And there's Olaf, which is basically the S tier jungler right now. Hard stomps pretty much everything, and is just really good with the new items, especially with Gore Drinker. So the bans are pretty standard, but the first thing that's already not standard is going to come now from Frankfurt, and we will see a Galio first pick. This is something that actually was showcased in the PrimeLeague quite a lot. We really have a high prior on Galio here. And the casters are going to continue and flame it a little bit. But I don't mind it that much. Just because Galio is also a flex pick. It can be put mid and support, and in some cases even top lane. But that's really situational. And he has a really flexible playstyle, so he can be both used as a follow-up engage on something like Malphite, Camille, those things with really long range engage that you can pretty reliably use, or even Jarvan. That would be another classic combo. And it can also be used as a disengage, because you just wait for somebody to jump into your team, and then you channel W, basically locking them down from hitting the actual prior targets. And right now we see while Galio was being used as mainly a follow-up engage for some time, right now we more or less see it as more of a disengage style. So I don't really mind it at all, but it is certainly quite weird for some people to see it picked at first. 404 answers with a classic combo. Let's wait until they pick it. Yeah, it's going to be Lucian Lilia. And this is a pretty standard combo ever since Lilia came out. Lilia is of course an AP jungler, so what you're always looking for with AP junglers is to have damage type differences. So if you're playing an AP jungler, then you ideally want an AD mid laner, so the enemy mid laner can't just stack MR or can't just stack MR against two different magic damage targets. And yeah, that's basically what you're looking for. Additionally, Lucian is also a flex pick in theory. We haven't seen it used as a flex all that much, and it is just a strong pick by itself. It's able to generate prio in pretty much every matchup. There are some that are a little rougher, but no matchup is unwinnable. It does need to do plays, or does need to get ahead in early to mid game though, because generally mages, and especially DPS mages, tend to outperform it at some points in the game. Next up is going to be Nidalee and Kai'Sa. Okay, Nidalee and Kai'Sa is quite standard, I guess. Nidalee is just really comfort for 7 Army. He's known as a Nidalee player, and he even played it when Nidalee wasn't meta. And Kai'Sa is just the best AD carry they can pick up right now, so they're going to pick that. I don't think it has that much of a good matchup into Lucian, but I think the trade-off is okay with Kai'Sa being so absolutely busted as she is right now. Okay, next up is going to be Maokai. So many of you would likely think, okay, Maokai, great pick because it's a flex pick. But spoiler, we're going to see Cyan on 4, so it's not actually done as a flex pick, at least in the minds of 404 here. Because basically all they do with it is they counter Galio. And likely because they have some insight that I don't really have, it's that they probably think that Galio is going to be support, especially with it being a pretty good matchup, a pretty good pairing with Kai'Sa, because it has a lot of CC. Yeah, it's basically just a big middle finger into Galio, because whenever Galio uses E, the Maokai basically just Qs behind him, and he can stop the E, or he just uses W when the Daunt is being channeled, and can interrupt it that way. And when Galio wants to use the bushes to get a vantage point and to look for an engage, he can just toss the sapling in there, and it if he decides to go for the mandate build, it even deals a lot of damage. I think this one was played on 11.2, but I'm not quite sure. But if it is played at 11.2, I would not necessarily think that it's going to be an Imperial Mandate Maokai because of the nerfs. Might be played on... okay, here it is, 11.2. Yeah, okay, it might not be an Imperial Mandate Maokai. It's not as strong anymore, but you can definitely play it. Okay, we are going to have another round of bans that we are just going to skip. Okay, now we see 404 goes ahead with Syndra. Syndra is a pretty decent blind pick in mid lane, if we think that Lucian is a flex, but it's also pretty good into Lucian itself, because after level 6, basically what you can do is she can wait for Lucian to commit and then just blow him up with a little bit of jungle help and her ult, and it's basically undodgeable for the Lucian. He also has to be really, really afraid of the Syndra E in early laning phase, because it's really easy for something like Nidalee to commit on him with the E of Syndra and then just, kill him. And if Lucian actually loses early in the lane, the game just gets so much harder, so they want to eliminate that possibility. And then it's going to be Wukong as the second one. And I guess that is just to eliminate the counter of what they're going to pick, which is going to be Sion, as I already stated before. And I would be okay with that. Taito might play a lot of Wukong, which I'm not sure of, but it definitely has a pretty good matchup into Sion, and it has a pretty good matchup into those tanky mid-range damage dealers. And on the Frankfurt side, we see Ashe and Misfortune Band. This is just clearly targeting the bot lane matchup. Pretty straightforward. Kai'Sa has issues with poke, especially with poke over waves. And by eliminating Ashe and MF, which are both very, very poke heavy lanes, if they even decide to play with Arcane Comet, it's even more so. And they can just bully out the Kai'Sa and perma push her in, with her not being really able to do anything. Same for Galio, by the way, because he just never gets into range for them. So yeah, that's just looking to make the lane easier for Kai'Sa. Here's the Sion pick. Okay, yeah. So the Sion pick, we already talked about that Maokai is not really a good flex anymore, and that it's just going to be straight support. But the Sion pick has 2 vantage points that 404 might be wanting to capitalize, at least from what I can see. I always remember this is just my perspective, and I may be thinking about the game entirely different than the stuff of both of those teams do. Or I may not consider something that they consider, and if you guys from both orgs hear this, I would really appreciate a discussion with you on these matters. Okay, so the 2 vantage points that I see for Sion is 1, if they actually look to play Lucian mid lane and generate prio of mid lane and top lane, they really want another lane that can reliably push. And if you're going to pick a tank and you want a tank that can reliably push, there's pretty much no better option than Sion. And the other one is if you already intend to play Lucian bot lane, which ultimately they end up doing actually, you may notice that they have a really big weak side at top lane, and one of those tanks that can just really well sustain the weak side and just tank against it because of the high health that he gets from his W. That's just Sion. And the third one is something that is entirely unrelated to the game, but Fengderer, the top laner of 404, is really confident on Sion. I looked at his OPGG and he has like 250 games or so on it last season, so it's probably just his most comfortable tank. And I want to say right now, it's really early in the PrimeLeague season, so a lot of teams may be wanting to look to just play comfort for now, because they're just still working on the basics or working on team cohesion and stuff like that. We're going to see a little bit more fleshed out comps maybe in the future. At least that's what PrimeLeague always delivered. Next rotation for Frankfurt is going to be Urgot Victor. And I really like the Urgot. I'm an Urgot main myself, and I think that In this case, it really, really is a good pick because I already hinted on it. 404 has like middle range damage, which means that it's not. Yeah, it means that it's not high range. So, what Urgot specializes in is if the enemies actually have to get close enough for him to be able to use his W, so the radius around him, then he actually wins everything basically because you aren't out damaging that guy and you're not out dueling him. And he also is really, really good into tanks. You may know that his passive actually deals percentage max health damage. And it does it on a really, really short cooldown after level 13. And basically, he can shred tanks, especially with the item build that people typically go for, including Black Cleaver and stuff like that. He's just a total tank shredder. I don't like him that much in this new season anymore, but that just might be because I just like Black Cleaver Death Stand so much. But I feel like he has quite wonky mythic item choices, which don't really suit him as much as the items before did. But he's certainly still playable, at least in this position, at least. Yeah, okay, so I really like that pick. Then there's Victor. And Victor is basically the zone mage. Together with stuff like Azir and Orianna. He basically pops down his ult, he pops down his W, and you can't move anymore where his you literally can't move anymore if you step in it, but you can't really afford to move into all the damage. So basically, what he struggles against is really high range, which 404 doesn't have. And what he struggles against is hard engage that cannot be mitigated, which 404 does not really have. They have it with flashes, with Maokai Flash, I guess. But at least with Lucian and Lilia, they both don't really provide that. So he's a really good mid-range threat to be able to contest them on that. Yeah, and he just also melts tanks. In the late game at least.
Ja, hier natürlich. Konsequent. Legende. Weak Side. Andy.
Ja, währenddessen konsequent Victor eingeloggt worden als Last Pick auf Seiten von Eintracht Frankfurt. Ich muss sagen, ich bin ein sehr großer Victor.
One thing I didn't mention with Lucia, with Victor is he's also if you still say Lucian is a flex, which they probably know because Vardax also plays it. It's a fairly okay blind pick. At least as okay as blind pick in mid lane gets. It's basically this, I guess, the second best after Syndra, which was banned out. So it's just a safe option, and it also happens to work well into them and happens to work well with this comp. What he does not get with Victor though, which he could have gotten with other picks, is setup for the Nidalee. So that's something we really need to consider. Both the Urgot and the Victor do not really have insane setup for the Nidalee. And with Nidalee, you tend to want to play around lanes with a lot of setup. So it's probably going to end up being the bot lane, or Nidalee is just going to decide to power farm. That's also a viable option. And there's the spice. The spice comes in the form of Varus this time. And it is a bit of a wonky pick, I'd say. As I already said, Eintracht Frankfurt does really, really good into mid-range damage. But they really struggle into long range. And basically, if we think about what Varus brings to the table, he ends up being played in mid lane. So I would guess it's his lethality variant, which I'm just going to check for now. Yeah, it's going to be his lethality variant. His lethality variant basically just gives long range damage on a fairly short cooldown with his Q, and it also is 80, which is good with Lilia. The only problem is, yeah, it's one pick that really works well into Frankfurt, but unless he's able to really threat to really solo carry this, with his team not falling apart around him against the meat grinder of Frankfurt. It's a bit of an off sync because it doesn't really work well with the rest of the comp. It isn't really. It just works on an entirely different range, and yeah. So, as a counter pick, I guess it's okay. And I guess it fits somewhat, but I would say there are better options than that. For example, there would be an option to go something like Azir. I would say to actually be able to match the tank shredding of Frankfurt, because Azir does that as well. But then there would be the problem that Lilia does not synergize so well with it, because it's double AP in jungle and mid lane. So I don't really disagree with it, don't get me wrong, but it certainly has its weaknesses and positives. So let's just conclude a little bit. As I said, the entire game, the analysis, will going to be in a different video, as this video is already long enough as it is. So what does Frankfurt gain in this draft? Frankfurt gains high prio comfort picks with Kai'Sa and Nidalee, Kai'Sa being the strongest AD carry around right now, comfort being Nidalee because it's 7 army, and a good flex pick in early phase with Galio, that also happens to be quite high on the prio list right now. And then 404 gains basically a really, really strong duo in the first two with Lilia Lucian, doing really, really high mid-range damage in early to mid-game. However, they really lock themselves into that playstyle really early into the draft, while Frankfurt actually keeps it quite open, which is the luxury that you have on blue side with the early picks, with the first pick, of course. But Frankfurt really does well, does keep giving themselves options on what they can play, and they actually are able to find counters into the comp of 404, which should not happen on blue side. Basically, red side should be able to counter what blue side is going to do, but I think that Frankfurt did a bit of a better job on that one. So, might sound a little extreme what I just said, because I really still think both teams have the chance to win this, especially since this is not LEC level play, or at least not quite. Yeah, I think it's pretty far away from LEC actually. But they both have chances to win, and we will see in the next video who does. But with Frankfurt's comp, all in all, apart from the Varus, pretty hard countering the 404 comp if they can set up on objectives and manage to not lose the early game that much. I would give the edge to Frankfurt here, and I would say that they win the game. By the way, I have not seen the game yet, and I'm making this assumption as a pure guess. And we are going to see in the next video if I'm right or not. Alright, so this is going to conclude the content part of the video. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, maybe even subscribe. And if you actually learned something, then you can comment on what you actually learned. That would be really, really helpful, because then I can see what I need to do videos on in order to really help you guys understand League and understand even pro scene a bit. And second of all, of course, I hope that some of the officials of both of those teams maybe see it. And if you guys want to contact me on Twitter or on this video even, I don't really care about that one, then you can feel free to do so. If you guys want to discuss maybe what I said in this video, or maybe if I'm wrong on something, because drafting is still something I'm quite new at. Then I would really appreciate it. Okay, guys. Hope you guys have a great solo queue, and good luck in your ranked games. Bye bye.